Will
And welcome everyone. Today we have Lindsay and Dana from Ex Libris, and Lindsay is going to be going over some best practices and kind of just tips for using our Alma sandboxes. And then on Thursday we will be continuing the discussion. So please have questions ready.
Yep.
And I will let her take over.
If I have to drop off at 10 till the hour. As we were talking about kids, I have preschool pickup, drop her off at daycare, my youngest. So I have to drop off at 10 till, but if you have questions, you can always carry them over to Thursday, and I'm happy to join on Thursday if needed. Carly, I'm happy to join. And also my email address is in here, so I'm happy to answer questions via email or after the fact too. So as Carly mentioned, we had kind of gone through a journey here with the sandboxes, and there were a couple different facets to that process. But first, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Lindsay Leonhard. I'm a customer success manager in North America. I primarily deal with the West region, although not always. And I'm really excited for this group because I can say I am in Kashmir, Washington, between Wenatchee and Leavenworth, and you guys probably know where that is. So it's not it's not regular that I can just say I'm in Kashmir. I have a background with libraries. I recently came over kind of from the discovery space, working with Summon to work with Alma and Primo V. And I live on a hobby farm with all kinds of critters and fun stuff. Yes, Mizzou, go Tigers. That's right. So anyway, I'm super happy to be here, and I may not know the answer to all of your questions because I am only a few months into working with Alma, but I know where to find them because I have actually been with the company since it was Serial Solutions circa 2011. So a long time, which makes it easy for me to find what you need. So we're going to talk very briefly about sandbox history, because what has happened in the past kind of informs where you're going in the future. And as we work towards like a data refresh on the sandboxes, if you are a heavy user of the sandbox, you may notice things changing and what we've taken into consideration with the approach. I'm also going to talk about, okay, then how we're moving forward. We made some updates to the sandbox already, and where it's going to have more of a structured approach. This is based on a bunch of conversations I've had internally, where I went around to support former customer success people, all kinds of people, said, you know, because you guys are unique in that you share 3 sandboxes between 24 libraries. You're actually not the only group that does that. There's a consortium down in California that's similar in nature that does that as well. And I really wanted to make sure I was drawing on all the experience in the company to recognize some pitfalls and what we could do here to mitigate that and make it really usable to you guys. Suggestions for when to use the Alma sandbox, of course. Talking briefly about maintenance, not the nuts and bolts, but the broad scope of what we recommend, since Carly will write out and largely take care of the nuts and bolts in the future. And then I'm just going to put in a plug for our support resources and how to make sure you're connected with them, since I have you guys on the phone. So a little bit of history here. Some of you were around back then, so I'm repeating, but as I understand it, at the end of implementation years ago, you guys kept 3 sandboxes. They were labeled with library names, even though anybody could use them, and they were labeled as Everett, Big Bend, and Bellevue. One of the things I found after I was connected with Carly is that the style of the sandboxes was outdated. If you were to implement today, you would have different things. So for one thing, you would have Primo V. So 2 of the sandboxes, it says, 2 of the sandboxes were on the old Primo back office, which was no longer correct. So I went ahead, and since that didn't involve overwriting any data or anything like that, I worked with support to have those updated to Primo V. You guys don't have what's called a CDI key. So one of the Bellevue profile that was on Primo V already had a production key in the in the configuration section. And what that means is it wasn't set up to publish, like if you wanted to test article data, these are not set up to publish into CDI in the sandbox space to test things. So one of the things I'm working on right now is kind of getting to a yes and getting you guys those CDI keys so that you have the option to test like article linking. You can always look at how your like title records you load in the sandbox will look in the Primo V sandbox, but that's something I want for you guys just to be able to test if you want to set up your proxy, that kind of thing. So we're not there yet, but I'm working on it. And then I found that I couldn't find any history of when the last data refresh, a fresh set of test data had been loaded into your sandbox. Because what happens is there has to be a request to support, and then there's a certain period of time that it takes for it to happen. Oh, I forgot to link here about the data refresh policies. So one of the things to just do to get things back on track is to start with a fresh set of data. So that's the history on it. So moving forward, based on the folks I talked to, we're recommending that the sandboxes are assigned library to library, and that it's a set group, that those names of Big Bend and Everett are dropped because that's not what they are. They're not being used exclusively by Big Bend or exclusively by Everett. So rename them with some kind of generic naming strategy, assign all the libraries to use you know, one specific or another. I know some of you have like multi-campus situations, so it would make sense for those libraries to be grouped together so that any refresh that happens can kind of all at the same time take into consideration setting up any architecture just to make it a little more usable. And then we recommend a refresh of the data. The reason that it should be split up and with people not moving in between is that there's a 30 active user limit to each sandbox. And experience from at least someone in support who's worked with a consortium similar to yours is that unclear sandbox usage can cause confusion. If you have like a multi-day project you're working on, somebody could just come in and mess with it, and you don't want that. So having you know, clear assignments is a good thing. And then again, we're gonna get those sandboxes set up without your one production key, like Bellevue's production key was in a profile, which this is not the standard anymore. And we want to make sure you guys are set up for more years of happiness going forward. So going forward, the sandbox data will be refreshed. It's in Carly's hands when she requests that. Of course, it does have a lead time. Carly will be assigning the sandboxes. So if there are particulars you want to discuss, you should discuss them with her about why you might want to be grouped one way or another. There will be a group communication method to make sure that you can send out something that says, hey, I'm working on normalization rules for a couple weeks. Please let me know if you intend to go in and touch anything, just to make sure that when you set out to do something, if you need to drop it and go wear a different hat at the library, because I know everybody wears a lot of hats, nobody is messing with anything. You will have a personal account in the sandbox that's under your name with the roles that you need. And as I'll talk about, you know, kind of the protocol for maintenance when it's refreshed in the future, just to make sure that your user account gets exported and then re-imported. And then you have a sandbox that will hopefully be up to date, fresh data, clear assignments. That's what we want, clarity. So there are some these are broad categories of when you would want to use the Alma sandbox. Anything large with a degree of uncertainty is a place where it is worth the time to use the sandbox. One of our tier 2 Alma people told me very wisely that it is always better to test for a problem in the sandbox, even if it's not perfectly set up just like your organization. Because I know there are settings and customizations that libraries make. It's still better to test broadly to catch any big issues than it is to try and fix something that has gone into production that is not correct. So anything with a degree of uncertainty, anything that's going to impact something patron facing. If you are setting out to tackle a project, like if your library doesn't use acquisitions and you're looking to use acquisitions in the future, if you would typically you'd set out a project, you'd make a committee or a subset of people working on this, anything like that, it's appropriate to use the sandbox to start tackling that, even if it's just to figure out the steps of your project. And then if you are learning something new, so maybe you're a newer librarian, you're coming into a fully functional system, but you're trying to click around and learn and break things, that's a time to use the sandbox as well. There may be things that right now you use the sandbox for, but a year from now you wouldn't use the sandbox for. That's totally normal because it's great for learning. The biggest consideration here is that any patron-facing activity in the live environment, if you don't have a high degree of confidence and it's with a large set of records, it's for something that sends out notifications to patrons or posts policies for patrons, you can have major disruption or disgruntlement associated with making a change that doesn't go well. And so that's a place to use the sandbox. The sandbox is also a great place to train new hires, or if you're revisiting all the role permissions, like if you have reassigned who's doing what at the library and you want to make sure that everybody sees the right pieces or doesn't see things that they don't need or shouldn't touch. The best thing to do is to experiment with that in the training environment so you don't accidentally take away a key function of somebody's role. You know, while you're trying to figure out the roles and then you can't remember and you have to put it back, it's a whole thing. So that's a great way to just test out what different roles are seeing. This chart right here, and I will send the full chart to Carly. After your sandbox is refreshed, these are the Alma users that are automatically generated, and there are 30 of them. What I'm recommending here is that you set all these to inactive immediately, since you will all have named accounts. But these are great if you are going to train somebody new, or you want to say, hey, watch the Alma Essentials, because we have those recorded trainings, and then go in and try this, this, and this. You can reactivate the appropriate user, and here you'll see a description of what they would do. And that should give the person the permissions they need in the sandbox to try out whatever it is you've assigned. But again, I do recommend that after a refresh, just put these to inactive so that you can use all 30 of your active users for your named roles. There's no police that if you go to 35, someone's going to call and be like, you have 35. That's just the general parameters that have been set forth for all sandboxes. So there's no sandbox police, but do try to keep it to 30. Any bulk record work is appropriate for using the sandbox. If you are setting up a new import profile, if you're testing out normalization rules or anything that's batch updating records, if you want to see how a record would look in Primo V, there's now a Primo V sandbox attached to each of these. The title level records will show up in a few minutes. If and when I get those CDI keys for you guys, I can send out more information about article testing. It's a little different. It doesn't continuously publish to production or to the sandbox, not production. But you can test title level records. And these sandboxes are fully separate from any production instance. So if you want to just mess something up and leave it messed up, you can totally do that. Is there a question?
Okay. So we'll just, as long as there's a yes in there. Okay.
Okay. So again, better to test than to fix a mistake in production. Always better, always, always. Patron-facing messaging. So of course, your Alma sends out letters and overdue notices and that kind of thing. If you're looking at changing these or restructuring these, you should do so first in a test environment. I have a funny story from a couple weeks ago where my public library called me 18 times in one day, an auto-generated call that says you have an overdue item. And the best part is I did not have an overdue item. In fact, I zero items overdue. 18 times. I finally just was like, should I block the library? So maybe, I don't know what went wrong there. I thought about calling them. Test any patron facing messaging, contact, anything, test. So you do not receive 18 calls about overdue notices that don't exist. Especially if you're looking at, some libraries like to go to like 5 overdue messages that have progressively different language. That's pretty common. And there are different letter types in Alma, and typically they are used for the purpose you would think. But if you're looking at using a letter type for a different purpose, because there's some aspect of that letter type that you like, you want to make sure to test that really well when you pick that letter type to make sure it fully will work for your purposes. So always with the patron facing. Another thing to use the sandbox for is to preview new release, preview new release information. So I linked here because I think this is super helpful. In our Knowledge Center, there is a calendar reminder for Alma releases. You can just download the calendar reminders right from there and put them in your Outlook or whatever email system you are using, so that you are notified around Alma releases. I too have done this. It's very convenient. And then you can also access your Alma release info. And this is true from production or from your sandbox. This question mark is there. You can look at the Alma release schedule and the what's new videos from the help menu. So new functionality is released a couple weeks before each release. So you can look at this and see if there are any ramifications. It's on a quarterly schedule at this point. There used to be monthly feature releases, but that was a lot for libraries to keep track of. So they went to quarterly feature releases, although there are still monthly bug fixes. So if something's broken, we want to get it out sooner than later. So every month they're releasing fixes. But once a quarter, they release new functionality. Okay, so the sandbox maintenance is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle here. When this sandbox refreshes can be performed a certain number of times per year, but for a large group like this, where there's going to be a component of exporting users and re-importing them, setting up any pieces that are of kind of architectural importance, those things are all overwritten when the data is refreshed. It is a nuke and pave type of situation. Even the information about like the CDI key that would push things into your Primo V sandbox, all of it needs to be saved and re-imported. Now I have some documentation for Carly on how to use our sandbox FTP to take all the users out of there, save them, and then re-import them afterwards, so that by keeping them all created in the same user group. But for this reason, it is very important, whether it's Carly or one for each sandbox, that only a single person coordinates sandbox refreshes. And nobody's submitting a random case to support to refresh a sandbox, because it will overwrite all the information in there. As we kind of internally put our heads together, only recommend that you do this once a year. Technically, you could refresh more often, but because of the number of libraries, the stuff with users, all that stuff, we wouldn't recommend that you do this more than once a year, or in a specific case, like if there's a good reason to do it. And with everybody assigned a sandbox, with everybody having some form of group communication, everyone should be notified in advance and be aware of, when it will be unavailable while it's being refreshed, all of those things. Very important because you could request refreshes more often. you guys will need a backup protocol written up. And again, I worked with an Alma expert on my team to write these up, although Carly, I still haven't sent them to you. I think you know the broad strokes of getting users in and out, but to make sure that everything's backed up as it should be. You should expect that after a refresh, you'll need to reset your password. Going forward, this round, I think it's probably going to be a nuke and pave, and then everybody gets their accounts and all that stuff. But the next go round, you'll need to reset your password. Your user account with your roles will be preserved, but you'll need to reset your password because that doesn't get exported into an XML and then re-imported for obvious security reasons. If I could just export everyone's password, that'd be a bad idea. So you'll need to reset your password. The sandboxes, again, communicate if there's an ongoing project or process so that no one else is disrupting your work. If that CDI key is adopted, you may end up wanting to learn to add your own proxy to Alma. It's actually not that difficult. So you could test adding things to an institution zone and looking at it in Primo V. That tends to be a secondary function of the sandbox. Most libraries focus on the records they're importing for testing, as opposed to testing electronic collections. But the big thing here, and I can't yell this loudly enough, a refresh overwrites everything. So again, don't request, just be like, hey, could you refresh? No. And then last here, I wanted to just put in a plug for our support resources. Alma and Primo V have online chat available, but it does require that you have a user role turned on this is in your production instance to see this little ... icon. It's also possible it's not in the menu and you'll have to click the ellipses. But if you want to be able to just chat with our support team to ask like how-to questions, or you hit a snag about how something works, or you're not finding the right documentation, whatever, those simple questions, chat is a great way to ask them because you get that real-time feedback. If you're encountering a problem that has like 10 different reproduction steps to get to the issue, probably don't use chat. You also don't have to have filed a case to use chat, which is nice. Again, you just go in, you can ask your questions and get your answer. So what I'm recommending to the group here is that first, everyone makes sure that they have a support center account to be able to file support tickets as needed. If you don't, there's a registration button right here. The tricky part here is that when you register, it doesn't automatically let you see everything that belongs to your institution, because, you know, then any student or anybody could register and we don't want that. So it does create an account, but you'll log in and you'll click submit a case and you won't see like Alma and Primo V. You won't see those options. It won't let you get into them. So there are instructions here for how anyone at your institution can grant support center permissions to see all the tickets and all the service types. However, it is not uncommon at libraries for someone to not be able to find this or do this. And given this is a closed and not public webinar, I'm pretty comfortable with the fact that anyone here who's given my email and told to contact me is associated as a librarian with your institution. So in that case, if you find that you fall into that category of you get into the support center and you click submit a case and there's not a drop down with all your options, just send me a quick email. I can fix that. I can grant you access to your they call them assets in our system, your institution's list of services, so you can file tickets and see all the tickets from your institution. Once that's created, if you there's information here about how the user role can be granted for online chat. If you have the online chat user role and you still don't see it, that's a time to file a support case, which is why I say get your support center access first and then back up to getting those chat options. But I would really pursue having that chat option. It has such a high degree of satisfaction from our users. It was only rolled out like a couple years ago tops, but the positive feedback of being able to just ask a question, a simple question, and get a quick answer has been overwhelming. So you can get chat in your for our support teams. I also put a little Alma glossary right here because I didn't know it existed when I first started with Alma, and it's very handy to just say, oh, well, what does that actually mean? There's a glossary. Put a link here to our Alma training. If you need a refresher with Alma, we have recorded trainings for that that you can go through. And then on the off chance that anyone here also works with Primo V as well as your Alma instance, I put a link here for a nice series that our training teams did back in 2021. But I really like the format. It's just a series of YouTube videos that take you from beginner to expert with Primo V. So those are all linked here, and I'll send Carly the slide deck after this. But again, with these support center things, if you are in doubt, reach out to me. I'd rather just help you out and get it taken care of than have somebody floundering around the support center looking for the button to click to get you permissions. Okay, so on that note, I ran through it pretty fast. I didn't time it out because this is, you guys are getting a bespoke best practices session. It's not, 24 library sharing 3 sandboxes isn't the norm. Without a network zone, that's another part of it. You guys don't use a network zone. So do you guys have any questions? Oh, I'm just now catching up on the chat here. Yep, so it looks like Carly or Christy jumped in on the 3 sharing of the sandboxes. Yeah, it's a cost savings. Oh, and Carly can get you into the support center. Oh, Kirsty, if you are having issues getting your stuff over to a different account, let me know if that is.
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Yes. It's been over a year.
Yep. Shoot me an email with the like particulars, like if it's under a different email address, send me the email address that you had on the other account and I can help you get it sorted out.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see. Voyager days of the centralized servers. Yeah, that's going back. I think I got through all the questions in the chat here. Does anyone else have any other questions or a question I missed?
So Lindsay, I've got something specifically related to the sandbox. So one of the things that we've occasionally run into is like sometimes we'll be testing, I think the last time it happened was we were testing importing a DDA collection, and it just was not working in the sandbox. And we went over to the production Alma and it worked. And we filed support tickets and nobody could ever figure out why is this thing working in production but not in the sandbox. So that tends to make us not want to use the sandbox if we have to. Yeah.
I haven't heard of DDA not working in a sandbox. That doesn't mean much because I've only been working with Alma for a few months. If you happen to still have those support case numbers, or Zoom didn't tell me who was speaking. Who was speaking?
Sorry, Kirsty Thomas from
Okay.
Sandboxes.
Yeah, sorry. So Kirsty, I can look back at the history on that and look around and see if they ever did figure that out. It's abnormal that something would not work in the sandbox, but then would work in production.
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
That was our take.
yeah, that is unusual. So I'm gonna make myself a note here and I'm gonna look at that.
Yeah.
You've piqued my curiosity too. I'm one of those people.
Look at all of
where
our
it's like,
cases,
oh.
you'll find it in there somewhere.
Yeah, yep, not a problem. I'm gonna see. Okay. So DDA not working in Sandbox, and it would be under this. It would be under your name. Did you happen to file it? Okay, I'll look into that and get back to you about it because
Sorry, I had the
I'm
chat
curious
window
as well.
open.
Oh, sure enough, 5 new messages. Kirsty, are you you're the most frequent Sandbox user? It sounds like.
Yeah, and we have the most complicated setup of anybody.
Gotcha.
We're
Okay.
we're 3 colleges and 5 campuses and 7 different ways of doing things.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I recommend that the complicated groups hang together when they assign sandboxes for the reason that there might be a reason to delay the annual refresh or really look at, that process. And having that attached to one sandbox that discussion attached to one sandbox would make it easier. Purely practical. Yep, Carly can still see everything.
I can, since Lindsay has can only be with us for like the next 15 minutes or so, but I can get my draft that I've been working on of like new policy architecture shared stuff up for us to discuss. I was gonna like take what I heard today and keep working on it for Thursday, but I mean, we can certainly take a gander at it now.
Sure. And I can also, Carly, I didn't go through in this because it didn't feel like everyone needs to know, but I did work on the process of all the things that need to happen with exporting and importing users. If that's still something I primarily work on with you, we can just schedule a follow-on.
Let's keep it centralized so it's
okay.
far more consistent. However, so here I will so this is what I just kind of started putting together from Lindsay and I's earlier conversations. And so I've got some of the general recommendations that she already went over today, some policies and best practices that I borrowed from other consortia who use shared sandboxes, like California, New York. Some of these are from Orbis Cascade. Some of the like basics of our structure and how I'll like set things up to go with. And then I created a form so that when a new staff person comes on board or when we like refresh everything, so we have a record of who has accounts, there'll be that form. I have set up a users forum, which I hope will expand past Sandbox conversations because it's infinitely more searchable than the terrible listserv through the state site. That's my own thing. I have started workshopping the Sandbox names, but now I feel like I could go a totally different direction. Maybe I name them after 3 different sized trees or something. But anyway, so
well, I'm from Eastern Washington, so I vote for 3 different varieties of apple.
Oh, that'd be kind of fun. Apples. I did a bunch, like I literally went in yesterday to everybody's and like looked at how many libraries do you have set up, how many campuses, how many user groups. I looked at like your FTEs, just anything I could think of that might help make a decision on what could be logical groupings and like, will this many colleges like kind of have about 30 potential sandbox users? So these are definitely negotiable. It was, but it did nicely work out that one of each, like the colleges whose college names are in the code of the sandboxes were each spread between the three. So it's not like too crazy confusing. And then I just kind of started writing down some of my notes on how I would configure. And these are, again, like very rough draft beginning-ish, to help me kind of figure out that whole backup protocol and reset up stuff. So yeah, so I put Everett, Highline, Pierce, Seattle, and Spokane together. If there's one that could possibly bump down, I think I would probably bump Everett down based on size, and some of how their institution is configured, but they're the one whose name is attached to that sandbox. So again, negotiable. Bellevue, Edmonds, Green River, Olympic, Renton, South Puget Sound, Wenatchee, and Yakima firmly kind of fell in medium-ish complexity of how much stuff was set up in their Alma environments. And then our smallest institutions who, for the most part, keep things the least complicated are Big Bend, Bellingham Tech, Centralia, Grays Harbor, Lake Washington, Lower Columbia, Peninsula, Shoreline, Skagit Valley, and Whatcom. So if you see any like significant, like, I don't want to share a sandbox with this person, please reach out to me, let me know. I was just, yeah, kind of playing with this and trying to be like, okay, the small institutions, 2 to 3 users, probably more than enough in most cases. The big ones, I mean, Seattle, Kirsty plus all of the campuses, Spokane colleges. I mean, like, so I think in number of active users, I got a pretty good break. But if someone sees a real issue on, well, that configuration totally wouldn't work for us or whatever, we can definitely play around with this. And I really wanted a good acronym for our small ones, but it's all consonants. So I couldn't make any work. But again, now I'm thinking we could just totally go with something else. So yeah, but check out the new Whack to Click forum that I created. Please register. It can provide a good place for our project group discussions, a better searchable discussion area. It's also like not necessarily like as findable in public, and actually once we've got our users, I can make it even less findable. So unlike the state one where I get random requests for people to join that listserv, and I'm like, yep, nope, we definitely discuss things that the state and CTC Link would not want us be sharing outside of our institution. But anywho, so that's all I have so far. The backup protocol will be written up in a separate document. This one is really just kind of to get everybody started on the same page again with how to get accounts, how to use accounts, and who they share a sandbox with. So, yeah, I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, my
Feedback?
opinion is not the most important, but that looks really good to me. You did good.
Thanks.
Oh, are any of you going to Aluna in LA?
I think we've got about 10 of us actually.
Awesome. I will be there. Say hello.
Yay! We'll all get some sun and some warmth.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I can't see chat.
Tracy, did I see you had your hand up?
Oh, no, I was raising my hand in the, yes, I'm going to Iluna.
Yes. Okay.
I didn't do any document links, just but Lindsay will share her slide deck with me, and I will share that out. The sandbox use and policy, as we develop that, of course, will be available to everyone. And then the recording and the chat will also be available in our meeting site. So,
Okay. Well, if folks don't have anything further right now, I'm probably going to drop off here. My email is in the slide deck. Really, don't be strangers. If you have any concerns or questions, or especially if you have any account issues with the support center or getting chat, that kind of thing. The institutions accessing other cases. So that was something in the old support center. I think I saw it in the chat that someone recalls. As far as I know, it hasn't been restored, but I don't work in that system day to day. So let me talk to our support team and see if they got that figured out. Okay, well, it was so nice to meet everyone. Those who are going to Aluna, be sure to say hello to me. I'm assuming they'll give me a name tag. So if I'm shorter than you thought, or not as blonde, or I don't know, at least you'll have my name tag.
I don't even know what color my hair will be by next week. So
fair enough, right? I'm
luck,
going to get
everybody.
a haircut, so I might come back with like a bob. Who knows? So I will talk to you all later.
All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Bye.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here today. I think this puts us on a really good path moving forward with our project groups and being able to do like good standard setting training on things, and also sharing knowledge on our processes. So I'm excited about it, but I am also very willing to hear feedback and the historical reasons for how things were done, so that we can make sure that any functionality that you rely on, we keep. And on Thursday, I will have the sandbox use and policies document. I'll also kind of poke around if you guys need. I'll get myself like kind of set up to create the support center accounts, so that if you need to come and we need to, get you approved on that, we can do that. And we can kind of talk about a schedule for getting the refreshes done. I'm not going to submit all of the refresh requests at the same time, because I want to make sure that we have a sandbox at least for people to practice in if they are using it. And we'll just kind of like set that schedule. I'll send out an announcement, and then we'll start submitting those refreshes, and you can start applying for the user accounts that you need for your institution. And one of the things that Lindsay didn't really delve into is the named user accounts is not the same as like when you create, fake patron accounts. The named user accounts are just those accounts that we want to make sure that we maintain from refresh to refresh. So if you want to create, 5 different types of permissions and see what those look like, but you don't care about them being maintained past the next refresh, by all means. If you need to create certain weird patron types or whatever, go ahead. I just want to make sure that when we're finally now doing refreshes, you're not having to reapply to get your access. I will just reload the named accounts that I have on record, which should also be good for security because the sandbox exists like basically, and not that it can ruin anything in production, but I mean, like, if someone who used to work at our institutions made themselves an account, they could then use that to get in the sandbox. I don't know why anyone would want to, for fun, go into Alma sandbox, but like, let's just have a better practice for that. So yes, I'm excited about this. I think it's a good thing. So yeah, think on how and who uses the sandboxes at your institution and what it would be helpful, like how you want to have those set up. One of the things that I was asked in a direct message is like, will we have like acquisitions and Rialto in the sandboxes? And I, because there's a mix in each group of like what modules get used, excuse me, acquisitions will be activated. To my knowledge, no one's using Leganto, right? I don't think so. It costs way too much money.
Pierce was at one point.
Who was?
Pierce.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we dropped it. It just wasn't catching on with our faculty and things like that. So yeah, it was a worthy experiment that just didn't work. So we don't have it anymore.
Yeah, and if
I've been asked about it here because we're we've been looking at other bookstore models, and I don't know if anybody else was in on that statewide discussion, but I think it was City University uses Leganto and instead of having a physical library. And so we've been asked about that model here, but I don't think there's any serious proposal for us to look into it.
That was such an interesting part of that presentation. I was thinking how much it would, could fundamentally change some of the work that we were doing, but, really interesting to have a different model.
Yeah, implementing Leganto and then getting faculty to use it is a significant challenge. Gonzaga did attempt to use Leganto. They started implementing it in the summer of 2018. And they switched all of their electronic reserves. They were custom making course material, like course lists for faculty to try and get it to catch on. And after the 3-year initial contract, they just had, and they have an entire like office of learning support people who were doing promotion for it and instruction on it, and like top to bottom, like wanted it to work and couldn't get it to work. Yeah, it really takes like a it was, I mean, it's cool, it's super cool, and if people can get into it and using it, and yeah, and if like, I don't think anyone uses Rapid ILL, but this is kind of the cool thing about knowing who's in what sandbox, if with this new structure, is if we do want to like have a project group that explores a certain Ex Libris product, we can ask to have that product activated in one of the sandbox. That project group can then work in that sandbox to experiment, and then if we don't like it, we do a refresh and it goes away. So yeah, price tag, donk. the Rapid ILL rep sent me an email, clearly does not understand what our actual organization is. But if people want more information on Rapid ILL, I will meet with him and save you the email spam. It significantly improved turnaround time and like success of finding materials at Whitworth when we implemented it. But it does come with a price tag, and it might, you know.
I think highlighted Rapid ILL at one point, but I don't. George, do you still have it?
I don't know. I'm not involved with our ILL people.
Yeah, now Nalco was involved with it, but she's left. So
Anyway, I think we've probably got a lot to think about, and I'm eager to continue this discussion on Thursday. And like Lindsay said, she is available, so if you want her to hop back in on Thursday and we can ask her some more questions, that is definitely possible. So I'm gonna let y'all go. I'm going to enjoy my insanely quiet house. Like, I don't even know how to function right now. The house is going to be as clean in 4 hours as it was 2 hours ago. Like, what? I don't even. It's a whole new world, folks. All right. I'll see you on Thursday. Have a good middle of your week.